Good afternoon, and thank you everybody for joining us for today's webinar on demand. We're going to spend a little bit of time today kind of lightly going through, is PBS Manufacturing right for you? We will be recording today's session just in case we get something really good out of this that we can share with others. The PBS Manufacturing is really a system designed to work for the small to small medium-sized manufacturing company. Think, say, 12 to 100 employees, and with companies ranging in 5 to $100 million a year. I mean, we're really working with those smaller entities that are growing, and oftentimes we end up being their first real automation project for the operational side of the business. And that's why I actually wanted to kind of dig in a little bit to a few points that I made in a blog post I wrote recently. And I'm going to do so with these few questions I have listed below before we get rolling. If this is your first time really trying to select an ERP system, I've been doing this for a lot of years. I've done it from the user side, and I've been doing it in the software side of the business for a long, long time. Here's a few things I can share with you to try and make your lives easier. Now, obviously, you've already started down this road a bit. Before you go too far, I want you to ask yourself, what are some of the key problem areas of your business that need to be improved? Now, everybody's maintaining customers and vendors and things like that. And most any ERP system you're going to look at is going to handle those high-level needs. What you really want to do is identify those things that make you unique. Those things that you feel like you're working entirely too hard to get your job done. What's holding you back from being able to continue to grow your operation or being able to get product out the door quickly? These are the types of things you want to start to identify before you sit down in a one-on-one presentation with someone like myself. Next question is actually just as important. How much is it costing you not solving these problems? That's key, right? Because all the time that you waste, that you could be spending on doing other value-added things, is costing you money. Identify some of those areas so that you can really kind of start to set yourself up to better understand, A, how much money you can save doing a project like this, and B, those key areas that really need to be solved by the software, and more importantly, the vendor that you choose to work with, because it truly should be a long-term partnership. This is not a one-and-done thing. You're not buying, an office suite. Who should be involved in your selection process? Another critical question. Oftentimes, and please don't take this offensive if you're the controller listening to me right now, it's usually the controller who gets tasked with doing this. And there's a problem with that. The controller should be involved in the process, but they're not necessarily on the operations side of the business, at least not to the extent that, say, an operations manager or a production manager would be. You want to make sure we've got all sides of the business represented, because everybody should have a stake in this and a say in this to ensure that we're managing every side of our business well. Lastly, what kind of a budget are you working on? More importantly, what should you be working on? Or with the idea here is you want to set yourself a budget, so you're not spending time looking at something that's going to cost you, $150,000, $200,000 when you got a budget of 20 or 30 or 40, or maybe your budget's only 8 or 10. I'll be honest with you, if your budget's 8 or 10, you probably kind of want to rethink that and go through some of these prior steps and take a look at the blog post that I did. It'll give you an idea how to better calculate that. But the idea is you really want to buy the appropriate tool. This is not really all that different from making the selection of a newer, faster piece of business equipment, say a new CNC machine, that's going to be able to help you produce product twice as fast. That's the same idea here. So you want to make sure that you're selecting the product that's going to work for you. All that said, let's dig in a little bit. And let's talk a little bit about PBS Manufacturing, how it may be able to help you out with your situation. Now, the application has, probably 130, 140 online displays and reports scattered throughout just the manufacturing modules alone. Add in dozens and dozens more on the financial side, and then the fact that many of these can be run numerous ways. You have thousands of different ways of getting at the data inside of PBS. That's critical because we don't want to live to just feed information into a system. We want to be able to get that information back out of the system in a useful manner. So we've got a lot of, we'll call them canned ways to get that information. Now, in addition, we can also introduce the ability to do your own custom reporting because each one of us looks at our company and our data in kind of unique manners. So we can write all the reports in the world, but at the end of the day, it's the reports you need that really count. So the ability to get back at your information and to utilize it in a manner that you need to support your decision-making process, because systems like this should not be a decision-making system, but more of a decision support system. So that said, we do offer a couple of different options. One I recommend these days is our SQL database on the back end. We use Microsoft SQL, which will allow you to go ahead and open up access to any workstation we would like, provide that access to the client, and allow them to make better use of it. Now, English, that means we could use a tool like Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Access. This is called iDashboard. If we're using the SQL version of the application, we can use a tool like Microsoft Power BI, actually a free desktop version of that, by the way. Crystal Reports, there's just thousands and thousands of different ODBC compliant or SQL compliant tools that'll allow you to leverage the information in your application and let you actually organize it the way you need to support your decision-making processes on a day in and day out basis. I want to talk really quick about data flow in PBS manufacturing, and then I'm going to give you kind of a mile-high view of some of the things that we can help you with. So everything we do in the operational side of this application kind of rotates around our inventory. It's sort of like the sun in the middle of the universe, you know? So we're buying things, right? We're moving those into inventory when we receive them. We're making things on something we call a shop order. You might refer to it as a work order or a job order. We call it a shop order. In the process of doing so, we're consuming raw material, adding value to them in the form of labor and overhead, and putting them back into inventory at a new value. At the end of it, we're then consuming that on a customer order. You can call it a sales order. But in either case, what we're doing is we're consuming it at the time we ship it. This allows us to have a nice closed loop inventory system. Now don't be put off that you only see a single level to the bill over here. We support indented bills of materials. You can make very complex structures in the application. And it's really easy to do at the end of the day. So all of this then flows into our core financials, which includes a full accounts payable, a full accounts receivable, and a general ledger application, giving you a complete end-to-end business solution to help you manage your operation. Now, we also have some other modules that we can introduce on the accounting side, including a full and comprehensive payroll. We have an ACA application for managing the Affordable Care Act in your operation. If you're a company that's just big enough to fall under those regulations, it's critical to be able to report that information to avoid costly fines. We have an application to help you with that. We also have a check reconciliation module for doing your bank reconciliation at the end of each month to keep that process simple. The idea here, though, is you can build a system to meet your needs. This is modular. There are some core pieces that you have to have, but after that, it's kind of up to you to decide what is it we need to do today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, and then kind of build your system accordingly. And then you can add on as you go. So let's take a real brief look at PBS Manufacturing. I'm not going to spend much time on the financials. I just want to give you an idea from an operational perspective, some of the things that we can help you do. So the manufacturing application actually consists of 8 modules. Those 8 modules are made up of our core 4, which is our inventory management, product definition, product purchasing, and way up here, customer order processing. Now, if you'll allow me, I'm going to come back here for just a second. I want to go back to that prior slide, and I just want to highlight that everything I mentioned here can be done inside of that core system. So those base 4 modules will allow us to have this nice little closed loop business system. So what's it do for us? Well, it's going to allow us through the inventory module to better manage our inventory. And that's top to bottom. That's product that we purchase, product that we produce. Maybe we're buying things and reselling them. Maybe we're doing both, right? We're buying things, using it in the manufacturing process, but perhaps some of it, the raw materials that we purchase also get used as items that we sell, as maybe spare parts. We can help you manage that. We can help you manage multiple warehouses, multiple locations within a warehouse. We can even help you manage lot and serialized items. So if you're a foods or a chemicals company and you need to be able to manage lots, we can help you with that. We've got the tools to allow you to manage down to that level. What we can also do in the inventory management module is we can introduce some basic pieces, right? If you're a simple company really trying to automate the operation side of your business for the first time, you've been using Excel spreadsheets, maybe you're using a basic accounting system that has a really simplistic inventory module associated with it. We're going to take that to the next level, if you will. We're going to give you the ability to do material planning. It's basic material planning, but you can do some material planning through the inventory management module. Really handy in helping you get a better handle on your operation. Similarly, we can introduce basic shop floor scheduling. We call it shop order schedule reports. They're very basic. A shop order in our system, we identify it with a unique number, right? A shop order or work order number. What item we're producing, how many we're producing, when to start it, when to complete it. We got all the salient points there, right? So we can actually run a schedule by item, by due date, or by start date. So we can see what we need to be starting this week, this month, next month, beginning of time to end of time, or what's due to be completed over the next period of time, whatever period of time you choose. So it really begins to open up some of the basic scheduling and planning functions, which is critical because one of the big benefits you should get out of a system like this is the ability to do things A, better, and B, faster. One of the side effects we tend to see, and I'd call it a side effect, it's probably a terrible term for it, but one of the side effects we tend to see with companies trying to automate the first time is a lead time reduction. And that's huge because if you can cut down the amount of time it takes you from the time you take an order to the time you ship an order by, say, half, that's massive. Maybe I'm only knocking a week off a 6-week lead time, but now I'm able to quote things and turn things around in 5 weeks. Now we've actually had customers, and I'll show you a couple quotes a little later on. We've actually had customers do half or more lead time reduction, where they have taken complex processes and turned them into something that takes them far less time to do. Some of them actually started quoting shorter lead times to their customers. Others, they actually charge for the pleasure. So they still quote the same lead time. They're in a highly specialized industry. But what they do is you want to get something instead of 8 weeks, you want it in 3. They can do it in 3. That doesn't matter. But you pay for the pleasure. So you can do some fast track ordering with them and get something faster than most of their competitors can provide. And that includes much larger companies, by the way. All right, so we've got some basics here, right? We're going to be able to handle our inventory, be able to start to manage our production flow. We can begin to manage our materials, what we need, when we need them, so that we have a steady flow of things. One last side effect from all this is we have a tendency to see a reduction in inventory. Now, you don't see it immediately. In fact, you might see just the opposite. You might see inventory grows for a bit before it starts to drop back down. Because what's going to happen is you're going to start to bring in the stuff you actually need. And we're going to bring that stuff in as we need it. The idea here is to get us into a little bit more of a just-in-time world where we're bringing product in as we need it rather than sitting on product that we may or may not need at some point in time. This allows us to go ahead and do a much better job of keeping orders moving through the production process quickly, which leads us back to that reduced lead time. Instead of orders sitting on the floor just waiting for the material to come in, we have the material so they can move it through faster. So I think you can kind of see how all this starts to come together. Well, in order to achieve that, we introduced that product definition module I mentioned. This is where we can build in our product structures, just another term for a bill of material. We can build in work centers. This is where we identify the different work centers on our floor for costing and scheduling purposes. And then lastly, routings, where we identify the production steps associated with making things. all this lets us calculate costs. Costs for the things that we make. Remember, I mentioned that value added. That's where that comes from. It's from the routing and grabbing our rates from our work centers to figure out our labor and overhead. Then, of course, we have the ability to buy things, right? We're going to do that through our purchasing module. We can source items to vendors and give you the ability to see who it is you should be buying from. And not only who, but we can see what their last price quote was and some performance stats that will be automatically tracking if you're sourcing your items to your vendors. And then in the last of the core modules, this is where we get into selling things. Here we're going to sell things, and we can sell them and ship them immediately if we have them on the shelf. Or we can actually sell things out into the future. Maybe it's weeks. Maybe it's months. In some cases, it may be a year or more. But the idea is everything has dates associated with it. And this is what allows us to do that planning that we talked about a little bit ago, because we know when a sales order is due to ship. We know when a purchase order is due to be received. We know when a shop order should be started and completed. All that information allows us to help you do things faster. So through our sales orders, we are going to do our billing, which is going to interface to our accounting. And we see that in the little slide that we went through here. You see how all that data is feeding back into our financials. So that makes up our core system. From there, we can introduce more advanced modules that get into far more details of, say, shop floor scheduling. We have a module called shop floor control. It's going to focus on hours. It's going to schedule hours, allow us to collect labor, allow us to be able to look back and see how long it really takes us to do things so that we can make adjustments to our routings, thus getting better costs and better schedules later. We can also introduce manufacturing job costing if we want. This is going to focus on the dollar side of things. In other words, this is what we think it costs us based on our bills and our routings. How much does it really cost us? So this gives us a far better cost picture. If we need that level of detail, this is available. And I'm going to tell you, using the manufacturing job costing and shop floor control together, they're worth so much more together than they are as individual pieces. We can actually truly help you automate the costing process if we're using this in conjunction with shop floor control. You're able to leverage this with hardly ever touching it, which is kind of cool. Last two, master scheduling and MRP. This gets into detailed material planning. So where inventory management's doing some real high-level basic planning, it's looking at real supply and demand and telling us things that need our short-term attention. This is looking at everything, up to and including, if you choose, putting in shipment forecasts, though they're not required. And this allows us to get recommendations. We get what we call order action reports, which tell us, look, you need to order these, and this is when we need them. We can apply rules to this process that we define in the item. So we can set things like order minimums, order maxes, order multiples even, if I have to buy things in cases of 24, for instance. All those rules get applied, and it's making strict recommendations to us so that we can make the final decision as to what it is we need to be doing. And it really helps simplify the purchasing side of things because it's going to allow us to get a report that organizes parts by primary vendor. Or in the event I've placed a purchase order that needs to be rescheduled with a vendor other than the primary vendor, it'll suggest that reschedule action under the vendor that PO is placed for. So our last module, capacity planning, this is going to take that MRP plan and it's going to extend it into an hours and dollars plan. So we can look and see, do we have the manpower to execute that plan? And then if we want, we can get budgets to see what it's going to cost us to execute the plan. So you can see where you can build a system to really meet your needs. You'll need those core four. You'll need our core accounting. After that, it's kind of up to you what you do or don't need so that you can actually build the system. Now, an important takeaway here, when you're looking at systems, you might find that you can find an application. Maybe you can find one that's going to cost you $5,000, $8,000, $10,000. Be careful, because what you're going to often find is that the ceiling is right at the right where your head is sitting at the time that you start using it. And you don't want to pin yourself into a situation where you're going to have to do this again in another year or 2 years. Make sure you do it right. Anticipate your short, mid, and long-term goals and select a system that's going to give you room to grow as a company. So as you continue to grow, you can continue to either leverage what you've already got or add components to allow you to do more. So anyways, I hope you find this useful. Very high level look at this. We encourage you, if you'd like, give us a call. We'd be happy to talk to you. I'll throw a few quotes at you real quick before we wrap. These are from direct customers. We have a company out west that makes gaskets, actually, and their comment was a great one. It was, the best part of implementing PBS Manufacturing was the dramatic improvement in visibility. It's night and day compared to what they used to have. This comes back to one of the key points I was making earlier. Here's a company that was able to cut their lead times in half on very customized product that they made. And then the last one just kind of puts it all into a nutshell, right? They were able to streamline their entire business process. Those are the types of things you want to do for your company. Increase your visibility, bring everything online in one unified application, improve your customer service, improve your planning and production flow, reduce your inventory and reduce product lead times, improve your costing and pricing, and overall improve your profitability. Want to learn more? You want to sit down and go through and touch on your particular needs and see how this is going to help you? Give us a call. Reach out to us at 800-969-7900 extension 145 or visit our website at www.pass-port.com. We'll be happy to help in any way we can. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found this helpful.